Hi friends, it's Walter Zemrock from the Love From Lizi design team, here with a new video for you today that is featuring the Tea with Tilda card kit. I'm making 4 cards that are a lot of fun, and I think that you'll find a lot of inspiration in. As a reminder, if you enjoy this content, please give it a thumbs up and like it. Also, you can follow me on both YouTube and on Instagram under the name zemstones.by.walter. Please give me a follow. For the first card, we're going to use a piece of the brown cardstock that is trimmed to 8 inches by 5.5 inches. We're then going to score it 2 inches in from each side the long way and fold them over so that they open and close on each end. We're going to need 4 pieces of the cream cardstock that is cut down to 1.75 inches by 5.25 inches. A cream card panel that is cut down to 3.75 inches by 5 inches, a piece of the patterned paper cut to 3 by 3.25 inches, one of the fabulous photo frames, also a piece of the rose gold paper that is, I trimmed it to 2 inches. We're going to use it for die cutting some elements. We'll use the Tea with Tilda stamp set, a piece of ephemera from the set, this lovely piece of the cloth lace, and we're going to use 2 other dies that aren't a part of this kit but coordinate well with it. The mini rose and teacup die, as well as a leaf from the So Kind Flowers die set. The first thing I'm going to do is to take our card base and adhere 2 of the cream panels onto the front. I use double-sided adhesive to do that. So here I am getting the first one aligned and then pressing it down. And then I go ahead and repeat it for the other side, so that we have one of the pieces of the cream cardstock on each front panel. I'm ready to do some stamping now that I have the front panels in place. I'm using this beautiful floral stamp from the Tea with Tilda stamp set, and I'm going to be stamping it twice, once in the center of each of the cream panels on the front of the card. I went ahead and stamped it twice with the brown ink just to make sure that there's a nice deep impression there. After stamping the first time, I wipe off my stamp, and then I go ahead and align it on the other panel, and then stamp it with the brown ink again. I usually do 2 stamps to make sure that I'm happy with the darkness of the overall image. With that image done, I can now move on to the other stamp that I'm using, which is this much smaller but really pretty coordinating leaf stamp. And I want to have it on both panels, and so I stamp it the first time above the flowers, stamp it a second time to make sure I'm happy with the impression. I clean it off, and then I go ahead and align it on the next panel over, making sure that I'm happy with the placement. I'm not measuring with a ruler, I'm just eyeballing the stamping as I go. Happy with the placement, I go ahead and ink up the stamp and stamp it down, and then stamp it again. Happy with that one, I wipe it off, and now I'm going to repeat, but down below each of the flowers, so that there's a nice pattern on each of the card panels of having the leaves above and below. And after stamping on that panel, I go ahead and move it over to the other panel. Make sure it's lined up the way I like it. Pick up the stamp, ink it, stamp it once, and then stamp it again. Happy with the overall results, so I clean off my stamps and put them away. And now we have the front of the card done. With the images stamped, I go ahead and start to color in the flowers. Here, doing it on the first panel, then doing it on the second. With the front taken care of, we can now start to work on the inside. I grab the cream card panel that's going to go in the center, and I put some double-sided adhesive tape onto the back of it, and then set that in place. I've also gone ahead and adhered down each of the panels for the insides of the flaps of the card, and then also put the patterned paper behind the photo frame and adhered that down to the center of the card. With that in place, I can take my piece of ephemera, which is the really cute Tilda, and glue her down into place. Just a little bit of glue, and then positioning it wherever you'd like Tilda to be. With Tilda in place, I decide where I want to put my sentiment on the inside. And once I'm happy with that alignment, I pick it up, put on some very dark brown ink, and then go ahead and stamp that sentiment into place just underneath where Tilda is. And then I stamp it again just to make sure that I'm happy with how dark the sentiment itself is showing up. I also decided to do it a third time just to make sure that it's dark enough, especially since it's over on top of printed paper. I die cut my other pieces out of the rose gold cardstock, my little teapot as well as these leaves, and some little hearts came out of the center of the teapot. So I thought it would be fun to go ahead and glue those little rose gold hearts around Tilda in place of like using crystals or something like that. So I glued those down into place. Then I went ahead and glued my leaves down, and I wanted those at the top of each of the inside panels. And what's nice is that leaves a lot of room for you to write a message to the recipient on each of those panels. So plenty of room for writing within the card. I folded over the piece of the cloth lace and glued down the sides to form a belly band, and then glued the teapot onto it as an accent. With the teapot in place, I took one of the beautiful jeweled sequins from the Tea with Tilda kit and glued it down into the center of the teapot, just as a little additional accent. Made sure I pressed it down firm to keep it in place. Put the belly band onto the card and it's finished. I went ahead and used my scissors just to trim off any strings that were sticking off of the cloth lace, just to neaten it up a bit. What a fun card. The second card is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to use an A2 brown cardstock card base. Card panel that is 5.25 inches by 4 inches, cut from one of the patterned papers with the cute little mouse in the teapot, and that blends right in nicely with that brown cardstock. Going to be using these blue, it's kind of a little border coming down on the stickers. We're going to use those around that. Then these paper flowers from the So Kind kit, they're available on the Love From Lizi website. They're absolutely amazing. And what I'm going to do is prop this little guy up so he's in the center of that flower. That's going to be on our card. I die cut using the With Love die from the rose gold cardstock with love, and then these two little branches of ephemera. That's going to be our... I'm going to start by gluing the mouse down onto the inside of the flower so that he has time to dry before we add him onto the card. That way he won't shift around as I position the flower onto the card. I go ahead and put glue at the top and the bottom of the ephemera and then stick them down. Next, I'm going to use a plastic knife to add some distressing around the edges of the patterned card paper. And this is just done to make it look a little bit older, a little bit tattered. I was kind of going for like a vintage country type of look and design with this card. And so by running the knife over, you can just distress those edges. Once I'm done distressing the edges, I take a blending brush and some tea dye distress ink and just run it over the patterned paper, again, to add some age and distressing to it. Then I go ahead and take the Vintage Photo distress ink and I run it around each of the edges that I distressed. With that done, I'm ready to adhere my card panel down to my base. So I add some double-sided tape onto it and then go ahead and press it on down to the card base. Just trying to center it within the base. You can see how good it looks against that brown cardstock. I think it's really pretty. I now glue down my ephemera branches, and I'm having them placed so that they're going to be on each side of where I'm going to put the flower that has the mouse in the center of it. Once I'm happy with where those are placed, I take an ink brush and just add a little bit of that brown ink onto each. I now take one of the border stickers and I peel it off, and I'm going to place it around the card panel. So I'm going to start at the top and have it run down the side. So I just figure out where I want it placed. And I don't want it right up against the edge. I want there to be a little bit of space so that it's noticeable, especially because it's such a nice, vibrant and pretty color of blue. It adds a really nice accent in contrast to the distressed edge of the cardstock. So I do that for each of the 4 sides. With the border in place, it's time to get our flower adhered down onto the card. Here I'm just showing you how it's going to fit between those two pieces of ephemera. So I grab my glue gun and make sure there's no clogs in the nozzle. Add some glue onto the back of that flower. And I'm pretty generous with it because I want to make sure that it stays adhered down. So put lots of glue and then go ahead and stick it down into place. The nice thing about using glue rather than the double-sided tape is that you have more chance to move it around. It gives you wiggle room to make sure that you're happy with where you're going to place it. I'm happy with it, so I hold it down just to try to apply some pressure and help it stick into place. I added some double-sided foam tape to the back of the With Love sentiment that I cut out from the rose gold cardstock, and I press it down into place. You can glue it if you don't want to have the dimension of the double-sided foam tape, but I like it. And there's our second card all done. Our third card is going to be a very clean and simple design with just a little pop of color. To make it, we're going to use a gray A2 card base, a white card panel that is 4 inches by 5.25, the stencil from the Tea with Tilda set. We're going to use the stamp set. And I'm going to use the, this is the mini rose and teacup die. And we may use some of the embellishments as well. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the panel, and I'm going to just do some simple ink blending using a lighter gray ink to get some of these circles just lightly onto the background. Go, that looks good. Now we're going to do some stamping, and we're going to start with using the long border stamp from the stamp set. And I'm going to have that border come along down the side, each side. So the nice thing is, once I have it set up for one side, it's just going to be rotating the paper. And the stamp will already be set in place since I'm using the corner of my stamping platform. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up the stamp, and my paper's down, it's flush. I have a paper back here just to pick up any excess so it doesn't go onto my platform. Now we're just gonna stamp that up. I think it's a really pretty border stamp, and I was trying to think of a way to use it. And since I'm using one of the rings in here with the dots, I thought that this would look nice to have a border like this. So I really like that look. I think it looks great. So on to the next step for stamping. I am going to stamp 2 of these circles onto this cardstock, and the circles are going to intersect. So we're going to have one, and I want to go a little bit higher, so I have some room down the bottom. So I'm going to do one here, then I'm going to do one here, and they're going to go through each other. And I like that. I like that look. I'm going to eyeball it and keep like just about a quarter of an inch, I would say, from the border for the ring, the first ring, to get it stamped. So get that onto my platform. Make sure that's aligned. Now I'm going to get the ink on it. Before I do that, let me get the border stamp off. I forgot about that. I will clean that up later, but at least it'll be off of there. Let's get this inked up. I really love a design that is kind of clean and simple with just a pop of color. And I think this is a really fun one. There we go. I think that's going to look good. Let's give that a shot. Stamp. There we go. That looks really good. I am happy with that. Okay, so I die cut this beautiful, I mean, this is so pretty, the mini rose and teacup die. I die cut it from just some scrap, like silver grayish metallic shimmer paper that I have. And I have to say, this die is really inexpensive. It's still available on the Love From Lizi website. It goes so well with this particular set, but if you're a lover of florals or teacups in general, such a great die. I highly recommend it. So I went ahead and I die cut that out of that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it onto a scrap of white. And my reason for doing that is to be able to fill in those spaces that aren't filled in, and to be able to color in the flower, which will allow me to color in the flower. So I am going to first go ahead and glue that onto the white. I'm going to do some coloring, and then I'm going to fussy cut it out. So I actually decided that I wanted a second teacup in rose that was kind of the opposite of this one. So all I did is I went ahead and cut another one out, and I had some white paper underneath it, and so that it would protect the good side of the cardstock and my plates wouldn't damage it, so that when I flip it over, it looks good, and I'll be able to do the same thing and have a mirror image of the teacup. I'm now going to use alcohol markers to color in the flowers on each teacup as well as the leaves. So I start with a red alcohol marker and I color in the inside of the flower on the white cardstock. And then after I'm done doing that, I take the red marker and I go over the outside of the flower as well, so that everything is red, but the outside has a little bit more of a metallic look to it. And I then repeat that and do the same for the second flower. Once the flowers are done, I take a green alcohol marker and I do the same thing for the leaves on each side of the flower inside of the teacup. coloring in the white on the inside first and then going over the silver on the paper. And it's a really pretty look. I think this is a nice detail that adds just that little pop of color that you need. After coloring, I fussy cut them out and I think they look great. So I take some double-sided foam tape strips, place it on the back of each teacup, and then adhere them down into the center of each circle. I trim along on the outside to make sure that none of the white is going to be showing. And when I'm happy with that, I remove the backing and stick it down into place. I then repeat that and do the same thing for the second teacup. I love working with these thin double-sided foam tape strips because they just are so maneuverable and easy to curve and trim and really get a nice fit onto the back of any of those kinds of items. I had die cut my Time for Tea sentiment from black cardstock and went ahead and glued it down to the card base. I then take 3 of the really beautiful crystal gems that are included in the Tea with Tilda set and adhere those into that middle overlapping area between the 2 circles. And I just love the look of the crystals versus the teacups and the floral. It's just really so pretty. I think this is the perfect card to give to a friend, or if you have a young one in your life who likes to have tea parties with friends or with animals, this would be such a fun card to use as an invite for any type of occasion like that. It's just really pretty and so much fun. And for our 4th card, we're going to start with a white A2 card base. I then have a navy blue A2 card panel. I cut 2 strips of the specialty paper down to 1.75 inches by 5.25 inches. We're going to use a piece of this beautiful flower lace. Going to use some ephemera. And we're going to use the Thinking of You die set. Let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to get the card panel onto the card base. Really simple, as you know. Just with some double-sided tape. Okay, got a little tape on my glass surface, so I'm going to get that up so it doesn't snag anything on me. And it wasn't my cleanest tape job, but that's okay because I can just push that down and that looks good. So let's move the tape gun for now and let's get our panel onto the card base. I find that it's easiest to do with it standing up to line it. There we go. I adhered each of the other card panels down and making sure that I left about a little more than half an inch of space in between them so that I could lay down this lace, trim it, and then adhere it down so that the lace is between the two card panels. I think it looks really pretty. So I'm happy with that, and I go ahead and get some glue onto the back of that lace. And honestly, it's just a matter of putting some drops here and there, because, you know, there are holes and spaces in it. You can't just do one straight shot, but you get the glue set where you can, giving it enough coverage so that when you press it down, it'll be sure to stick. And once that's done, and I put my pin back in my glue press, pick it up with my tweezers, and get it set into place. That's such a pretty design. And I think a really clever use of that particular lace. All right, those are cut. So I'm going to put those on last, and I'm going to go ahead and get started with these pieces. For the flowers, I am simply going to glue those down. So just get some glue back there. And you can position them however you like, but I am doing kind of a symmetrical thing of having a word here, words here, and then like having a flower at the end and a flower at the beginning to kind of, but if, you know, you can arrange them however you'd like to. This is just how I had it in mind. And what's nice is you could pop them up on foam tape if you'd like to, but where this piece is going to be, you know, kind of dimensional, if you will, by not being flat, I didn't want to do that. And so for him, all we have to do is get some glue on the back and adhere it down to right there, and he'll be fine. You could add a little bit more dimension and have him sticking up off of the, actually, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to use some double-sided foam tape for him. I think I like that. It's not too thick, so he's not sticking up way too much. But what you have to decide is, I want him to reside right like that flower there, going across. So I'm just going to keep that in mind and work across from there for that piece. Perfect. For the top, you can put it anywhere. And now just a piece for the bottom. And for that, again, you can put it anywhere. Now, if you have any extra and you want to fill in between for some more stability, you certainly can. You know, I don't think there's a need for that, but if you'd like to do that, you may. Get those strips off. And let's get him lined up there. He's so cute. I want to just make sure that he's between those flowers. There's a little bit of space there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just aligning it a little bit. There. Great. Now, let's get our glue on the thinking. Oh, got a little bit of dried glue at the end. Get that off. There we go. Okay. Let's get our thinking in place. Once that's dry, I'll come back and rub off some of that glue that might have gotten onto that cardstock. Thinking. Now we can do the of and you down here. And we're going to place of. Yep, that was right the first time. That has too much of a tilt. There we go. Thinking of. And now you. And for that, I'm just going to align the bottom of the Y with the bottom of the F. There we go, thinking of you. Now, the last thing there is to get some embellishments on here. And I am once again going to go, these particular ones that came in the Tea with Tilda kit, they're just so pretty. So I'm just going to throw a few of those on there. These are just gorgeous. So much fun. Let's put one there. That one went flying. I saw where it landed, a little rascal. I'm going to put one over here before he tries to get away again. Another thing you could do, and actually I think I will, because this will look really nice, I think, is I'm just on those 3 flowers from the lace that are visible, I'm going to put a little pearl in the center. So I'm going to take one of these strips, and I should be able to cut these, I'm thinking, because they're not individual. I think they're strips. Oh, they're individual, even better. Look at that. Now for this, I am going to put a drop of glue right there in the center of each of those flowers. Just because sometimes these smaller embellishments have a tendency of falling off a little easier. Oh, look at that. That makes such a nice addition. It just makes it look extra fancy, doesn't it? Oh, I see. The glue. So these can be strips, but they don't have to be. So instead of having to cut, I'm just breaking it and gluing them down myself. Now that one went right there. Have to remember to clean up my tweezers after this because I got quite a bit of glue on there. Oh, and all that tape came up there. There we go. So this is just a perfect example of how, you know, these were made for strips, but you don't have to use them that way. Think outside the box a bit. And that card is done. How pretty is that? I love the juxtaposition of these two different paper prints, then incorporating in these fun ephemera pieces and that particular you know, die for the sentiment. I love it. Who wouldn't want to receive that card in the mail? It's so pretty. That concludes our fourth card.